we'll go ahead and move right to Mr. Chris Robinson for a presentation.
Would you like me to present from this angle or do you like me
What's your best angle?
I think the right side.
Yeah.
You're fine right there.
Okay, maybe good, I'll be addressing the board here, so. I have given you a few different packets of information. We're not going to go too much into detail about the CPC tonight, so the one you had on top, if you open that up, that's for the school. And I also just want to, just give some general remarks about the audit. So the audit, first off, just want to thank you for being here tonight and pleasure to be here. And so as we've gone through the audit, we've developed our audit opinion, which is going to be an unmodified opinion, which means your statements are materially accurate and free of error, and also in accordance with, we call them generally accepted accounting principles. There's probably no issue or errors. We also had no findings on the audit. As part of your audit, you receive federal funding in excess of $750,000. We also do a single audit. You also have an unmodified opinion in single audit. As major programs, we tested your child nutrition cluster, which is your master school lunch program, your school breakfast program, and your summer food program. And I just want to thank Sheree and Jen and business office for all their help. They're very organized, very helpful. As far as any disagreements or difficulties on the audit, we had none. We also had no uncorrected errors or misstatements. We did have, as is normal, we had adjusting entries that we provided to the school, especially for, you have budgetary accounting, and as part of the audit, the PD requires you to do what we call full goal accounting under certain accounting standards. And those are typically what we do most of the entries. So you have your budgetary accounting, which is your inflows and outflows. We also have no layers to that, we call it full goal. That's for the long-term assets and liabilities. So as we go through this presentation, I'm going to we can talk about that briefly. If you could pull out this report, which is all the reports are good, you can see there's a trend analysis on it. This is essentially your management letter. It also provides a lot of valuable information about the audit. First off, when we talk about the general fund analysis, which is the trend you see right here, the trend. The trend is very positive, and you can see, especially in more recent years, you've been receiving more federal COVID money, including investment funding as well as investors. So that's the providing for your school health and safety, also providing you with additional funds to make capital expenditures performance. So you're seeing that the fund balance is increasing. Also, with a lot of the districts, you've had a higher balance in your cash and investment funds. You've had significant investment revenues, so that's also part of the lower fund balance. If you could turn to the next page, this is another multi-year analysis. The general fund has an unassigned fund balance portion, so your unassigned fund balance is the use revenue focus. You're somewhat limited as far as how you can use this. But you can see there's a steady trend of increasing. That's increasing in relation to your overall fund balance being higher. There's a few paragraphs here that talk about your unassigned fund balance. You have some restrictions based on the school code of 688. Essentially tells you that you cannot have more than 8% of your next year's fund balance in the unassigned fund balance. And if you do, you have some restrictions on how much you can raise your real estate taxes without the referendum. The last paragraph is Government Finance Officers Association. They have some standards they recommend for putting aside a fund balance. Their standards typically are exceeding your maximum that you're allowed to put into the unassigned without triggering your limitations on the real estate increases. So you can see here, it talks about $14 million is their standard, but that would exceed your 8%. So typically you're in good position to max out your unassigned fund balance. You might meet their recommendations, but they don't take into account some of the limitations you have in that respect. Any questions so far? Okay. If you could turn to the next page. This this talks about your assigned fund balance. And this has been increasing over the years. Your assigned fund balance is what you decide, and as well as you authorize your management to set aside for various purposes and future costs you may incur. And there's a few different, you can see on towards the right hand side, the breakdown between health insurance increases, or OPEB, which is your healthcare retirement costs, your future salary benefits, and your PSERS pension plan costs. So those are anticipating you may have these costs that come about, and you're setting aside money to prepare for that. And in terms of the PSERS, that has been moderating over the last 6 years. It was about more than 34%. So that's been a little easier to do. You look at the volume page, talk about the 5-year history of the general fund revenues. And if you concentrate on the last 3 years, including this current audit year, you can see those sort of significantly elevated. And that's because of the COVID funding, your RFSs, your ESSER funding, ESSER student aid. That's been seeing significant funds as well. And if you look at the very last line here, fiscal year 23-24, there was a percentage increase of 3.8% over the prior year. So you have a few reasons for that. You have more tax collections, and for reasons you're probably aware of. You also have an increase in basic subsidy. You're seeing that possibly. You turn to the next page. This is a 5-year analysis of the general fund in total expenditures. And this is relatively in line with your expenditures. You have a 7.2 increase in your expenses, but this also includes the transfer to the capital project fund. So if you would strip out the transfer, you're relatively in line with the revenue increases to recommend those store spending matches your revenue streams.
Is there a reason why we're holding the water to this increase? Is there a driving force?
Yeah, that's mainly the result of COVID funding. So you can only recognize your revenues to the extent of your expenditures. So as you receive more revenue and use it, then you would have a portion of more expenses. So it's directly there. You can see that 3-year, where you jump up from 73 million to 80 million to 82. That's the COVID funding that's been, making the schools flush for a few minutes and giving us more options. In terms of the increases from the prior year, you had regular program instruction, approximately $1 million. Special ed programs, approximately $1 million. And then, like I said, you have the transfers to the capital project fund, which should increase by about $2 million to set aside for future capital uses. The next piece of this, the bottom page, is talking about your budget versus actual results. And so these are if you look at the section that talks about actual revenues exceeded budget revenues by over $7 million. And there's 3 parts of that: local, state, and federal. And those are all over budget, which is positive. As far as your local revenues, it's your tax collections, especially wages, real estate taxes, as well as real estate and legal taxes. State sources are over budget because the subsidy was unexpectedly higher. And federal sources we talked about through our RFSs, your ESSER funding through COVID. Moving on to the next bullet point about your expenditures exceeding budget by $4.4 million. And that was between your regular programs, your special programs, and the operating transfer to the capital project fund. And that's less than you were over budget for revenues. So if you go to the, actually let's go to the bottom real quick here. The budget tuition cost for the technical center, the actual cost were less than expected, so that's only $1,069,000. Overall, your expectations for your budget were a $2.4 million loss for general fund, but your actual results were about $500,000 net income for general fund, which is very positive. And I would speculate with your budget that probably were some expectations you would receive and would use the code funding, and then you would end up using it, which you essentially reaching the end of the that will be used all the funding to this fiscal year. And I'll just point out that package I sent you, there's an exhibit G on page 7, that will give you more detail about the budget versus actual state general fund. And if you would have any questions after the meeting, we can definitely address those in the topic with the, anyone have any questions so far? If you go to the next section, this is called overall operating results. This section has to do with government-wide financial statements. So that's a particular set of exhibits. And I mentioned that earlier, the government-wide financial are also known as reportable statements. So taking your budgetary accounting and adding your fixed assets and long-term liabilities. If you could focus in on the column that says 6/30/2024, and you could go down to the net position, you'll see there's a $78 million deficit net position, and you may be asking, well, why is it in such deficit? If you go down to the first bullet point below this chart, it talks about your net pension liability, and your net effective liability is $114 million. If you were to remove that, you would be in a positive net position of $36 million. And as many of you know, the net pension liability is done by an actuary who works with the PUSER system. It's allocated based on your percentage of payroll as in relation to all the other schools. And it's not due immediately, it's still a long-term estimate of what your liabilities would be. And sometimes it does trend with your contribution rates, and the actuary helps to determine what that amount would be. And typically that would go again if your liability is increasing. Typically your employer contribution will also increase, which would make sense. So that's the main thing I wanted to point out about that. Turn to the next page. There's some other items in here talking about some of the money is owed back to the general fund from the cafeteria fund. So it does look like you may have the funds available to reimburse the cafeteria fund. So it's just something to consider. And if you go down to the second part of the page, this talks about some other comments on the audit. We generally give some general guidance about your real estate tax collection due to third-party collector, who's then forwarding that to you. So it's important for the district to keep track of that, look at the trends. We also, in the audit, we look at the trends year over year. We look to see that there's similar collections in the month for the prior audit year versus the current year, and even years prior, to make sure that there's nothing unusual going on with the collection process, and it makes no sense to the district. So it's a very important area. And I don't think we've seen any issue with the district, but we can continue to audit that. That's an area of risk. It's a lot of unfortunate developments as well. And I think that's all my general comments. You have a lot of information available to you right now, and I want to keep you confident that you should have some time after the meeting to look over this information, and I can make myself available again through the business office. Any questions you might have. If you have any questions right now, I'm happy to try to answer those. That's all the information you can address. Quite a long, so not expecting you to review that today. If you have questions before the audit is wrapped up, even after you guys actually find it. Okay, yeah. So we're in a final position, but you still have an opportunity to ask any questions before you do the question. All right. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How would you evaluate our financial stability?
I mean, based on the information I presented, it seems like you're in a good position. I don't typically compare to other schools. I think you're in a good position. Everyone is going within the range of building right now, especially from the general fund standpoint. And this cliff is coming with the COVID funding going away. So, but it looks like you're in a good position to move in the future. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Moving to athletics, Mrs. Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request approval of the following supplemental hires for the 24-25 spring season. Varsity softball assistant coach, varsity assistant track coach, varsity co-assistant track coach. middle school softball assistant coach, middle school baseball head coach, and middle school co-head track coach. Any questions or objections? I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for the 25-26 fall supplemental contracts as proposed. Any questions or objections? I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Renzi.
I'm not, thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Gonzalez. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sykes. Moving to buildings and grounds, Mr. Detwiler.
Thank you, Mr. Panzel. Request approval of the following event and building usage request. Spread on 110, and with no questions or objections, have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following addition to the substitute custodian list for the 2024-2025 school year. With no questions or objections, have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Kokenar, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Langston?
Nothing, thank you.
We have nothing else, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detwiler. Moving to the Carnegie Free Library, Mrs. Driscoll.
I don't have anything to add to the agenda other than I did attend the meeting, and our library is doing a lot of interesting things, trying to story hours, brought back into place, and also a lot of adult activities are starting to happen there, so it's just a great opportunity for our community to try to get involved, adults and children, and enjoy the library. It's pretty interesting things that go on last week.
Thank you,
I'll have
Mrs.
there. Mr. Martre, you have anything else?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to the Carnegie Area Career and Technical Center, Mr. Kokenar.
Thank you, Mr. Panzel. Request approval to dispose of through salvage or repurpose the following donated items. No longer in use. Black 1998 Ford Explorer, white 2004 Dodge Ram 2500, gold 1996 Ford Explorer from the Auto Mechanic Technical Program, and a 1996 Ford ambulance from the Protective Services Program. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request permission for Tina Dahl, CACTC Skills USA Advisor, and Caitlin Ackerman to take 14 CACTC Skills USA members to the Skill USA Pennsylvania State Competition scheduled for April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2025 at Hershey Lodge in Hershey, PA. Approximate cost of $10,526.42. I see that to be paid by the district. This includes competition registration fees, lodging, dining, transportation, tolls, and substitute costs. I see that spreadsheet. No questions or objections like that's placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
10C, request permission for Tina Dahl, Workforce Development Coordinator, to take senior welding students to Westmoreland County Community College on Friday, March 21st, 2025 to complete the American Welding Society certification testing. We will leave the CTC at 7:45 a.m. and return at approximately 1 p.m. The CTC van will be used for transportation. Testing fees will be paid using Perkins funds. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request permission for Tina Dahl, Skills USA Advisor, to arrange a community service project with Collinsville Shade Tree Commission during the month of April. The actual date will be determined once the Shade Tree Commission receives word of when the trees will be delivered. The project will include approximately 8 CACTC students, along with Mrs. Dahl, who will assist with planting trees around the Collinsville area. The CACTC van will be used for transportation, so there is no cost to the district. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request to approve the spring 2025 occupational advisory committee listed as attached. No questions or objections like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request permission for Justin Schreiner to attend the Skills USA VA state competition on April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2025, and the Skills USA State Committee representative and judge for the heavy equipment competition to be held at Shippensburg, PA. All expenses will be paid by Properties Association of Pennsylvania. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
10G, request permission for Nordic Shreve to accompany Nathan Cobb, CACTC welding student, at the 2025 Skills USA PA State Welding Competition to be held on March 11th, 2025, at Pennsylvania College of Technical Motorsport, PA. Approximate cost $1,172 to be paid by the district's Skills USA account. This includes lodging, registration, transportation, tolls, and substitute costs. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Manzella. Mr. Detwiler.
Nothing, sir, thank you.
Mrs. Langston.
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Manzella, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coconut. Moving to curriculum, Mr. Detwiler.
Yeah, Mr. Pansell, I'd like to request approval of the following professional employee travel in accordance with the district travel policy. Ashley Prince to attend the California University Disability Summit on March 18th, 2025. No questions or objections. Have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the addendum between Seton Hill University and the Collinsville Area School District for college and high school dual credit for the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections. Have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the agreement with Shippensburg University for the 2024-25 school year as proposed. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of the summer school proposal as attached with no questions or objections. I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Renzi.
I have nothing, sir.
Dr. Coons.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, that's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Detwiler. Moving to cyber, Mr. Martray.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. We just have our cyber service agreement to request approval of the 5-year cyber service agreement with Seneca Valley School District as proposed. No questions or objections. I'd like to have that placed on the
I have a
agenda.
quick question on that. So that's saying that we're not going to do our own for 5 years, though, right? Because we always talked about, like, perhaps doing our own cyber, but this here is saying we're not going to, right? Our own instruction, right? Okay. I know that we had to create our own curriculum and all that, but we're going to continue to use them for 5 years.
You just placed it up to you.
Yeah, I knew, I wasn't on the board then, but I just knew that it was like discussed. So, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Driscoll, anything to add?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Goodman?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Martray. Moving to federal programs, Mr. Renzi.
We have nothing, Mr. Pansell. Dr. Coons?
I have nothing, thank
That's
you.
all we have today.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Pansell.
Moving to finance, staying with you, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you. Request approval to accept the following donations to the Bible Club from Central Fellowship Church for $50, from Francis and Mary Orlick, $100, Ron and Roxanne Duke, $240, and the Central Fellowship Church from the Mission Fund for $50. No questions or objections, I'll get placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for the 2025-2026 general operating budget for the intermediate Unit 1 in the amount of $549,522, which includes the Collinsville Area School District's contribution of $35,339.55. No questions or objections, I'll get placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the attached requisitions and orders of the authorized district business office to process purchase orders and payments. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to change the broker of record for the errors and omissions, legal liability, property casualty, auto, law enforcement, professional, and excess liability insurances to MGI Risk Management. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr.
I
Detwiler?
have nothing, sir.
Mr. Coconut?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Robinson, anything?
Nothing further tonight.
That's all we have, Mr. Manzella, thank you.
Thank you. Moving to food service, Mrs. Sangston.
Thank you, Mr. Pansell. Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background objects. Approval of the following additions to the substitute cafeteria list for the 24-25 school year. No objections or questions, I'd like to have on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Martre, anything?
Nothing.
Mr. Cochran?
Nothing negative.
Mr. Sherman?
I'd just like to remind everybody, we still have the Giant Foods Feeding the School Kids campaign still running all the way up to March 31st to be able to go to Martin's and everybody in the community to help round up. And again, that money would go towards Collinsville backpack program and pantries. So that's something one first to thought of.
Thank you. That's all we have, David.
Thank you, Mrs. Southern. Moving to personnel review and liaison, Mr. Renner.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella. Request the conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the professional substitute list for the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the support personnel substitute list for the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
The following Family and Medical Leave Act leaves are confirmed by the board. We have an A effective February 24, 2025 until on or about March 10, 2025. A clerk effective April 3, 2025 intermittently for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. A teacher effective March 4, 2025 until on or about April 14, 2025. And a teacher effective February 26, 2025 until on or about May 26, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for an A to take leave of absence effective February 3, 2025 until on or about March 31st, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And request approval for an A to take leave of absence effective February 10th, 2025 until on or about March 31st, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Detweiler?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Coconut?
Nothing.
That's all we have, Mr. Manzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Moving to policy and legislative, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Angelo. The only thing we have is for information only under 17A. That's the policy 610 and 11 were updated in accordance with the Consumer Price Index amount set for 2025 in accordance with applicable PA law. That's all we have. Mr. Driscoll, do you have anything else?
I have nothing else, thank you.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Martre. Moving to safety and security, Mrs. Driscoll.
We have nothing for this. Mrs. Sangston, do you have anything else?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Parlay?
I have nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to special education, staying with you, Mrs. Driscoll.
19A, Master Teacher, request approval for the yearly subscription for Master Teacher online training for the special education support professionals at a cost of $3,465, subject to the Connellsville Area School District standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. Hearing no objections or questions, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Thank you. Students, that's all we have under special education. Mr. Martre, do you have anything else?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Staying with you again, student services.
Student services, travel, I would like to request approval for the following travel, and I'd like to include all of these together, 1 through 25. Having no objections or questions, I'd like this placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And that's all we have for that. Okay, 20B, musical volunteers. Request approval of the following 2024-2025 CHS musical production staff volunteers as proposed. Hearing no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Okay, student teacher placements, request approval to provide student teacher placements for St. Vincent College students as proposed. Hearing no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Okay, 20D, piano restoration, request approval to enter into a service agreement with Steinway and Sons for the restoration of a piano at an estimated cost of $68,914 as proposed. However, I would like to reserve the right to amend this if that's before Wednesday. Having no objections or questions, we'd like that listed on the agenda.
No objections or amendments?
Excuse me, did you say you want to pull that?
She said she has the right to amend or
Oh,
Number 2024 and
is that
2025.
okay?
Oh.
You? Mr. Wentworth, is that okay, or did you would talk with her?
yeah, that's all right. She has the right to do that, yes, she's the chair.
That's what we're getting, Mr.
2024 and 2025 musical production staff. Request approval of the following addition to the 2024-2025 CAHS musical production staff for one performing professional orchestra musician. That's it. Having no objections or questions, we'd like that placed on the agenda.
Put the question you just asked, Mr. On the professional musician. Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
All right, that's all we have there. Do you, anything else, Mrs. Senshi?
Nothing, thank you.
Anything, Mr. Kirkendall?
Nothing, thank you.
And that's all we got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Did a good job getting it rolling there for a while. Moving to technology, Mr. Detwiler.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval to purchase 12 Blockslate interactive displays from blank at a cost of blank. With no questions or objections.
Question.
Sure.
So, we put that out for bids, right?
That's
And when was the opening of the bids? Because I never even got a message. Did anybody get a message on the board that they were opening bids?
That was written into the RFP that our solicitor prepared.
When
I-
they were opening?
I was not invited to the executive session meeting where it was discussed, so I assumed that the solicitor was handling all the communication on that.
So I want to see
What's it cost?
all the bids.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to see how much it costs. I want to see the very original bid, and I want to see what you wrote out for the bid.
I'll be in my office at 7 a.m. tomorrow.
Thank you.
Could you
I don't think the original was a bid.
send those out?
I can, how about I'll scan them to everybody.
That would be
Does
good.
that work, Mr. Witt?
Absolutely, and they,
I don't get them.
the bid RFP was actually available on the district website, so those would be available to anybody. The actual quotes, you could certainly provide any of the board members at this point.
Request approval to purchase 1,150 Lenovo Chromebooks from Dell Connection at a cost of $315,600 as budgeted, capital contract, and hearing no questions or objections, like that, one placed on the agenda.
Question on this, we've been doing this for some time, Mr. Gosnell. I believe you said something about Microsoft, because Microsoft updates all the time. Is that the reason why we have to keep?
This isn't Microsoft, this is Google. So when Google certifies a Chromebook, the original date on that was 6 years from the date that they certified it. So it is not related to your purchase date. And what happens is they will automatically update until a certain time, and then they basically, they stop receiving the updates. We saw this happen with our Chrome boxes where certain websites were no longer accessible because they were using a newer technology that was not available on the devices. On top of that, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has required all districts to move their state mandated testing to online. This year it's optional, but next year it will be required. And according to the guidelines from the state, they expect those devices to be within 4 or 5 years of age to make sure that it will properly load the state test.
Well, I know we need it because we need it for our fit days and we also need it for our remote days. So I don't have a problem with that. We're having problems because Google Classroom, teachers can put that out there. They can do their lesson plans on that. And that can be brought down out of the cloud by the kids. We could very easily keep those Chromebooks, in my opinion anyhow, keep those Chromebooks in the building. And the only time they really need to take them home, they can be more supervised so we don't have where they get destroyed or something happens to them, we have to keep replacing them. Because if we could replace as they start to go, you know what I mean?
So
If they
these,
start to break down or something happens, then replace them.
these are not being replaced because they're being abused. These are being replaced because of their age. So what we did was we have 13 grades in our school district, and we give them to a student in kindergarten, and that is a touchscreen device. It flips around like a tablet. They are asked to keep that for 4 years, and then they are given a new device in 4th grade that is not a flip around touchscreen. They're asked to keep that for 4 years, and then they get a new device in 8th grade, and they're asked to keep that for 5 years until they graduate. So there's no easy breakdown on there that would allow for us to fit within that 6-year automatic update window. You know, I've tried. I've come up with all kinds of different graphs and scenarios, and you know, what can we do this, and you know, so that was the strategy that was agreed upon 7 years ago, and at that time we were keeping kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade in the classroom, and then the pandemic sent all of the devices home, and actually those grade levels have proven to be most responsible with their devices, but I cannot come up with any other model that accommodates the refresh that's required.
We've got to check around and see if there is one we can get instead of buying the same one all the time where we don't get into this legacy cost continuously. I guess I'm just old school.
I don't
think
understand
saying
your
the best
question
way to
now.
reach our kids is face-to-face teaching myself. And you need, these are needed, don't get me wrong. I understand that because of technology and the age we live in. But I still think we need to do a little bit more of that and not depend on the Chromebooks. Because if a kid gets on a Chromebook, you know, we're asking kids in certain age, even in 1st grade and 2nd grade, you know, if they're taking a spelling test, now they have to be in a position to learn a keyboard. If they hit one letter wrong, they may know those words just by writing them out. If they hit one letter on that keyboard that's wrong, it's going to be wrong. And you know, so a lot of these, they don't tell a kid what they're doing wrong. Okay, it's just you input the information, it tells you what you're doing and what's wrong. That's all. It's not going to tell you the solution to that.
That's not
I
true.
guess that's what I'm after.
That's not true. So as
Yeah.
part of Google Classroom, there's a feature called practice sets that actually the teacher can set that up. The student can have multiple attempts to answer that question, and then it identifies if the student is struggling to master a concept, and it actually offers remediation for that student.
No.
Mr. Lewis, anything additional?
Nothing else, thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Franzel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Moving to transportation, Mr. Coconut.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Request approval of the following additions and updates to the bus and van drivers list. Request for rejection, like that was on the agenda.
Hearing none, other than placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Manzo. Mr. Renz. That's all we have, Mr. Manzo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coconut. Nothing for agenda items, assistant to superintendent.
Just the kindergarten registration is next week. There's information on the website, and you can also call your respective building if you want to register.
Motion to adjourn.